The night my best friend's mom and I got stranded in a snowstorm was never supposed to happen, and yet it unfolded with the quiet cruelty of fate. The kind that doesn't announce itself with thunder but creeps in with falling snow and a dying engine. We had left the small mountain town just before dusk, the sky already bruised purple. Her insisting we'd be fine because she'd driven these roads 100 times before. She was calm in that way only someone who'd raised children alone could be. Steady hands on the wheel, eyes forward, voice warm even when the wind began to scream. Then the storm hit like a living thing. Snow swallowed the headlights, the road vanished, and the car slid once, twice, before settling at an angle that made my stomach drop. The engine coughed, sputtered, and went silent. For a long moment we just sat there, listening to the wind batter the metal like fists on a door. She exhaled slowly and said my name like it mattered, like it grounded both of us, then reached into the back seat for blankets that weren't there. The cold came fast, seeping through the doors, the floor, our breath turning white in the dark. We tried the phone, no signal. Tried the radio, dead. The storm erased the world beyond the windshield, leaving us in a small bubble of freezing air and rising fear. She didn't panic. Instead, she took inventory, the way she always did when life tested her. Flashlight with dying batteries, a half-empty thermos, one wool scarf, gloves without their pair. "We'll get through this," she said, not as a promise but as a decision. When the heater refused to work, she made the call that would save us. Her voice low and firm over the howl of the wind. "We'll have to keep each other warm." It wasn't awkward. It was practical. Survival stripped things down to what mattered, and what mattered was heat, breath, and staying awake. We layered what we had, shared the scarf, pressed close enough to feel each other's heartbeat, and counted breaths to stay calm. Time stretched and twisted. The storm roared like an ocean, and the cold tried to convince us to sleep. But she kept talking, stories about her son when he was little, about learning to drive in snow, about how fear shrinks when you give it a name. I answered with my own stories, my voice shaking but growing steadier. And somewhere between shivers and shared laughter, the fear loosened its grip. Her strength wasn't loud. It was constant. She checked my hands for numbness, rubbed warmth back into my fingers, reminded me to sip from the thermos, reminded me to breathe. I realized then that courage can look like kindness under pressure, like choosing care when the night is merciless. Outside the storm raged, but inside that stalled car, we held the line against it together. Two people refusing to give the cold the last word. The hours that followed blurred into a long vigil. The snow piling higher against the doors as if the world were trying to bury us. And still she kept us moving. In small, vital ways, stretching toes, rolling shoulders, whispering reminders not to drift. I learned the rhythm of her breathing, the steadiness of it, and matched mine to hers when panic tried to take over. We spoke about hope as if it were a tool you could sharpen, about the simple acts that keep people alive when comfort disappears. She told me how storms pass, even when they feel endless, how dawn always comes, even if you can't see it yet. And I held on to those words as the night pressed down. At some point the wind softened, not enough to promise safety, but enough to let us hear ourselves think. And that's when we laughed, quietly, almost in disbelief at how strange life could be, how a wrong turn and bad weather could turn into a test of trust. The cold never left, but neither did our resolve. When my legs cramped, she shifted so I could move. When her voice grew hoarse, I took over the talking. We kept each other awake with memories and plans, with small jokes and bigger dreams, with the shared understanding that neither of us would give up on the other. And then, at the edge of exhaustion, we heard it, a distant engine, faint but real, cutting through the quiet after the storm. Hope surged so fast it made my head spin. We pounded on the horn, flashed the dying light, and when the truck finally appeared, snow-choked and slow, relief hit us like warmth spreading through frozen skin. The rescue felt unreal, hands helping us out, blankets, questions, the shock of standing again. But what stayed with me was the look we shared, a silent acknowledgement of what we'd survived together. Later, wrapped in hospital blankets, I watched dawn spill pale gold across the mountains and understood something new about strength, about how warmth isn't just heat but presence, how survival is often a shared act. That night changed the way I see storms and the people who face them head on. It taught me that courage can be quiet, that care can be life-saving, and that when the world goes cold, choosing each other can make all the difference. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that humanity shines brightest in the darkest moments, subscribe to the channel for more powerful, true-to-heart stories of survival, connection, and hope, because the next one might be the warmth you didn't know you needed. Weeks passed after the storm, but it never really left me. Snow melted from the roads, life returned to its normal rhythm, yet something inside me had shifted, settled deeper, like a lesson carved by ice and silence. I went back to college, back to routine, back to laughing with my best friend as if nothing extraordinary had happened. But every time I saw his mom, there was a quiet understanding between us that words couldn't fully carry. We didn't talk about the night much, not because it was uncomfortable, but because it felt sacred, like something fragile that didn't need constant retelling to remain true. Still, I noticed how she watched the weather more carefully now, how she insisted on extra blankets in the car, how she checked twice that phones were charged before long drives. And I noticed how I changed too. I listened more. I worried less about small things. I understood in a way I never had before how quickly life could narrow down to one simple goal: keep going together. One evening, not long after, a late-season snow dusted the town, harmless and soft. Nothing like the storm that had nearly claimed us. We were all sitting at the kitchen table, me, my best friend and his mom, steam rising from mugs of tea, the window glowing amber against the cold outside. My friend joked about how dramatic the weather forecasts always were, and she smiled, but then her eyes met mine for just a second. In that look was gratitude, relief, and something like pride, not in survival alone, but in how we'd faced it. Later, as I walked home under the quiet snowfall, I realized the storm had given me more than a story. It had given me a standard, a measure of what matters when fear strips everything else away. Kindness under pressure, calm in chaos, the courage to say, we'll get through this, and mean it. Months later, when I found myself helping a stranger whose car had broken down in the cold, lending my coat without thinking twice, I understood how these moments ripple outward, how warmth passed on can outlast any winter. That's why I'm telling you this now, because stories like these aren't just about surviving a night. They're about what we carry forward from it. If you believe in the power of human connection, in quiet bravery, and in stories that stay with you long after the screen goes dark, subscribe to the channel and be part of a community that keeps these moments alive. One story at a time, we remind each other that no matter how fierce the storm, none of us has to face it alone.